Good evening. Welcome to 5 Day with Jay. I am your host, J.R. Murdock. Thank you so much for joining this meeting. How are you? Sometimes when I sit down, whether it be writing the blog, hitting record, when I start streaming, I have no idea what I'm about to sit down and talk about. I started doing this as a way to kickstart my brain, to get me to talk when I had no idea what I was going to talk about. That's been one of the biggest challenges of doing these videos is, yes, next to me, I've got a notebook and I write down, hey, I think I should talk about this. I think I should talk about that. I rarely, if ever, refer to that notebook. It sits next to me. It's got topics in it. And I know I've crossed off a couple of topics because I'll be like, oh, I talked about that one yesterday, or I talked about that one last week. And I'll cross those topics off as I go along, knowing that I've already covered that topic. The reason I have the topic list is in case I sit down and I freeze up and I don't know what I'm going to say, don't know what I'm going to do. Again, as I said, this is a challenge for me. This is not the easiest thing for me to do, is just sit down and off the top of my head, start talking, start rambling. I read a lot of webcomics. I mean, a lot of webcomics, probably a few dozen at least, if not more. A lot of them are running stories that I continue to read. Some of them are your typical 3-panel comic strips, 4-panel comic strips that you would find in the daily newspaper. I don't read the daily newspaper funnies anymore because they're not really that funny. I can't remember the last time Garfield made me laugh or Hagar the Horrible made me laugh. Yet they're still in the paper all the time. They're cute. They're interesting for a moment, but I really don't read the Sunday funnies that much either. I'd rather go read the comics that I've got all kinds of them I'm subscribed to. But about a month ago, I saw a running theme across several of the comics that I read. And I don't know if this was planned. I don't know if it just happened. But over the course of about a week, several of the artists posted a comic of the artist sitting at their desk. I don't know what to draw. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to create. This is a common theme, not just among writers. I've seen it among painters. I know it among writers. I know it among artists. Looking at the blank page is very intimidating for any creative endeavor. I get that. I totally get that. Starting this stream is a creative endeavor, and it can be frightening to just sit down, start streaming, and go, what do I do now? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say? It's very easy to get into that type of a mindset. That's why I do this, to get my mind to start moving without me having to think about it, without having to dwell on what am I going to say, what am I going to record. Yes, I could sit down and script these. I could sit down and read the blog post that I wrote for this. I'm not going to do that again. I've said many times in the videos, I said it on the blog. They're two totally separate things. If you watch the video and read the blog, there's different content in each. There's a reason for that. I don't want to bombard people with the same thing over and over and over and over again. That's why I started mixing up what I talk about. For a while, I got stuck in a rut where all I was talking about was, what is today's progress? What did I do this one day? Okay, so now I'm spending this week talking about a wider range of topics. That's where I wanted to go. Again, this isn't writing advice. I'm not a professional writer. All I'm doing is talking about my process and how I approach writing. That's all I'm doing. When I sat down last night, my co-author, Mike Plested, had sent me his most recent chapter for the Jack Kane book 3. Awesome. I believe it was the night before last. But he sent me the chapter. I read it, but I was working on gRPC 3. So I finished gRPC 3. We got a couple thousand words. So I needed to change gears and get into the Jack Kane mindset. What I really wanted to do was sit down early, write words in Jack Kane, and then go write some words in gRPC 3. Because when I do gRPC 3, I'm cruising along, and I told you before, I'll stop mid-sentence, I'll stop mid-word, knowing, okay, I'm going to come back to that, and I'll be able to pick up and run from there. With Jack Kane, I'm doing a full chapter and passing that on. It's a little different. So when it comes to Jack Kane, I need to get back in that mindset. So I procrastinated a little bit. By that, I mean I played a game on my phone for a little bit. I listened to some music. I watched a TV show. I started watching Lock and Key. Side Trail, Lock and Key. So far, I'm one episode in. It's a good show. I think I might continue watching this one. Saw the guy picked up for a second season. Back to writing. I knew I needed to write a Jack Kane chapter and get that back to my co-author as quickly as possible. We're trying to pass this back and forth faster than we have done before, because if left to our own devices, we could take a year or more to write a book. We want to get through this book before September. No, I'm not Billy Joe. Don't wake me up when September ends. But we want to have this done before September gets here. And I sat down, as I said, the day before I had read Mike's chapter, and it was a few days before that I had written my chapter. When I sat down and began writing chapter 5, I'm like, okay, we've done this before. Just type a sentence and start rolling with it. So I typed, Jack had been lost in his drawings for the better part of an hour. What? So I'm not going to cover anything. I'm not going to read any more of it because it's a work in progress. But I had to go back and go, where am I going with this? Remember, I wrote that chapter previous days before. I had been working on gRPC 3. I've been working on getting print books done. A lot of things were going on in my head. And when I wrote that line, I had to go back and read the end of the last chapter I wrote, which I probably should have done before. I went back and I read that, and I'm like, of course, it makes sense now. One of the other reasons that it was such a challenge to work on this chapter is it's a new point of view. My goal is to now write 2 Jack Kane chapters and a Betsy chapter. If you know the main characters, Jack and Betsy are a love interest. And I want to get into her point of view. This is the first time I've written her point of view in any of the Jack Kane books. Jack Kane being the main character in the story, he should have the bulk of the words in the story. He's the title character, Jack Kane, and the Statue of Liberty, Jack Kane, and the Kaiser. But I'm slowly developing an ensemble cast for him, unintentionally. I will be bringing in more characters slowly. I don't want to do like Doc Savage and have this whole army of cohorts that he pals around with. That's not my plan. That's not my goal. But I do want to start bringing in some ancillary characters and give them a bigger role in the book. They won't be a POV character, but they will have more to do in the book. For example, Betsy's father. I want to give him more to do in the book. Betsy is going to become a POV character because in the first 2 books, she was important. I feel she's now more important and deserves her own voice. So I'm going to start writing her into the books, which is why I did that. But it wasn't easy for me to sit down because I've never been in that character's headspace before. I've had female POV characters before. Both VNA Shipping and gRPC 2 have female viewpoints. Never had that with Jack Kane. Hadn't done that. So this was a brand new character, brand new headspace, and I needed to figure out, how does she perceive our main character? How does she perceive her father? So I needed to work through that, and As soon as I started writing after that first sentence, about an hour later, I've got 1,500 words, and I'm like, why did I wait so long to just start typing? That's how I write. I sit down, start bashing on the keyboard, and let the words happen. If I get stuck, I'll walk away for a minute and come back to it. I mean, I won't sit there and stress over the words. I do try and write in one session a chapter, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes I'll get distracted. Sometimes I'll go talk to the missus for a few minutes, something. But if I ever get to a stuck point, I need a quick reset. I'll go downstairs, grab a spoonful of peanut butter, grab a glass of water, something. Just get away from the computer and not just sit there and stare at the screen, hoping beyond hope that words are going to magically happen all by themselves. If my fingers aren't moving, the words aren't happening, the story isn't growing, and the story isn't developing. So that's one of the challenges I have when it comes to my writing. In the past, yes, I was a plotter. I would plot my books extensively. I would have a Bible, a story Bible for the book I was working on. I would have 2, 3, 4 pages of notes for each scene I was working on. And then I would sit down and write and almost never look at it. Eventually, I got to the point where my plots would get more and more abbreviated, to the point where sometimes I would even have one sentence or one paragraph for an entire chapter that was my plot, but I plotted. As I got further along, as I wrote more, I realized, well, why am I spending my time even working on a plot if I'm not referring back to it? So I would just plot along. As I'm writing, again, I keep a notebook next to me. It's way over here today. I always keep a pen next to me. It's the same thing like when I'm at work. If something happens on a conference call, I try and write stuff down. If something happens while I'm writing, I write stuff down. I keep notes. I love keeping notes. Sometimes I actually refer to those notes. Other times I will take those notes and incorporate them into the Scrivener document I'm working on. But I will keep notes to keep the story moving along. So if I get to a stuck point, what was that character's name? What was that location? What was the vehicle called? I have a list of all that stuff running down the side. So instead of having to go back through my document or do a search, look something up, it's all right there. What color were that character's eyes? Well, when I add a character to my list, I take the description of the character and I put it in there, as much detail as I have. And I know if that's all the detail I have to flesh it out later. Okay, so we do that. Not a problem. That's my process. That's how I sit down and begin writing. For example, after I'm done with this, I'm going to have a snack. I'm going to get this uploaded. And I'm going to get to writing and try and get a couple thousand words done in gRPC3 tonight. I want to keep that one moving along. It's progressing. We're over 20,000 words now. I'm having a blast. I'm having a blast writing that one. We're over 7,500 words in Jack Kane Book 3. Words are happening. It's an exciting time. Again, I have a limited time before we go on vacation. But we'll get there. When I get back, I'll get right back on track. That's my goal. I need to get back on track as soon as I return. I know I need to get Almost Superheroes Book 1 primed and ready and uploaded so that people can pre-purchase and have Jack Kane. This morning, 3 short stories, a short story ebook with 3 short stories in it came out. That was Mike and the Pizza, Pat and the Apple Pie, and Jelly Boy. And I sat down and I read them. I enjoy sitting down. Okay, it got released. I've read them before, and I just felt like sitting down. It's just a short story, so I sat down and read all 3. They're 3 pieces of flash fiction, 3,000 words. It was a quick read, and it was fun. It was fun to read through them. It's been a very long time since I actually read those. I did edit them programmatically and scan the stories to make sure I didn't find anything glaring, but I didn't just read the story for enjoyment. This time I read the story, and I thought they were really cute. I really enjoyed reading my own story for the first time in a very long time. I'm like a lot of writers. I usually don't go back and reread my old stuff. I don't. At any rate, as I said, that's my process. When it comes to these videos, when it comes to writing, I try and just doing the videos, I just start talking and I ramble. Writing the blog, I try and be a little more organized, but same thing. I just start typing and there's the blog post. When it comes to writing, same thing. If I'm stuck, I type a word, I type the next word, I type the first sentence, I type another sentence, and I force my way through it. This is one of the pains of being a discovery writer, a pantser, a writer into the dark. That's one of the challenges you face is I don't know what's going to happen next. And it's fun to get there. At any rate, this has been 5 A Day with Jay. I've been Jay. You've been awesome.